Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Thanks for joining in today. We are back on the Coxton Sub for some operations, and we are running the southbound manifest. Alright, thanks for joining today. We are here over in Johnsville Yard, getting ready to head south. Typically, this train is expected to depart Johnsville around 7 a.m. It's about 10 this morning, so we had a yard crew that was running a bit late. It happens sometimes. I don't have the hump yard in the back populated with anything yet, just because I don't want to clutter up my GPU right now. But let's go ahead and briefly talk about everything this train does before we get going. So this is a way freight, meaning that it heads from one location to another. So this one goes from Johnsville to Coxton, and it works industries, towns, things along the way that are not directly served by any dedicated locals. And there are quite a few places. There's 6 different co-ops that it could theoretically work. It's got a salt mine. There's a couple of small yards in different towns for dropping off cars at industries, and the purpose of these way freights helps to move higher volumes of cars across the route to areas that get a lot of traffic without having to run a bunch of repeated locals. So it allows you to get some more trains out on the line all at once. So they can clog up the line, so you want to make sure to get a good idea about how you want to route your other trains around these, but fortunately there are plenty of sidings along the route for you to take care of that. So first up, we've got some cars from Moscow. These are the MOAs. Really MO is Moscow, but all these are going to MOA, which is just the same industry. Here we have the CAs. The CACs are all the Castlegate co-op cars, so these are all cars going to the co-op. You'll eventually see that. Quite a few hoppers and some stock cars. So a lot of work to do at the Castlegate Co-op. Then we have the CABs. These are cars going to the bleach plant in Castlegate. We have some BRCs. These are all going to Brockwell. So once we get to Brockwell, you'll kind of see how that works. And then we have some FUCs. So anything that's FU is going to Fulton. We have some KCS cars. So KCS cars can be dropped off either in Moscow or in Highbridge at the Highbridge Co-op. So today we're going to take these over to the Highbridge Co-op. And then we have some HIFs, which are Highbridge Co-op cars. So lots of fun stuff to do there. Let's get to it. Alright, first up we're going to go ahead and stretch the train. So let's get our first notch of throttle. Let's get the brakes out. And we're going to patiently wait until we can get our train all stretched out, and then we will pick up some throttle after that. As you can see, it shows we're moving at 0 miles an hour, but we are just barely moving. You definitely do not want to move your train out too fast when you're first starting. In real life, that is how you very quickly break some knuckles. Here we are in that same vantage point looking to the south. In the background, you can kind of see bits and pieces of the town of Moscow. I have not built anything of the town of Johnsville just yet, so eventually we'll get there, but we've got quite a bit of work to do on the south end of the route first, and so that's where we're eventually going to head up today. For our power today, we do have a U33C and a SD40 tunnel motor. So altogether, these come up with about 6,300 horsepower, and our train today is about 5,900 tons. So we're looking at just over 1.1-ish for our HPT. Yeah, it's not too bad. A little under 1.1, but just over 1, about 1.6 or so. Sorry, 1.06. HPT, so that's horsepower per ton. On this route, the grades are pretty easy, so especially when you're heading south, I mean, you can get away with probably even like 0.75 HPT. So we're going to have plenty of power today to take our train throughout the route today. Even though we could go at a higher speed, we are going to keep the speed down just because, knowing our route ahead of us, we know that this is the town of Moscow, and we have some work to do here in less than probably a mile or so, so we're not going to get too fast. If we were going all the way through town, we would definitely pick up pace and get up to speed. Well, here we are in Moscow. We do have 5 setouts for Moscow. We have 5 pickups as well. Those are the cars sitting just to the left of our incoming locomotive. So in Moscow, this way freight will only pick up and set out any cuts of cars in this very small yard here just to the left. That is technically the interchange with the Moscow Industrial Short Line. And then to the right of the screen, there are 3 tracks. That is a KCS interchange yard. And also we will be setting out some cars to interchange here if those cars are at the front of our train. Since they're not, we're going to go ahead and take them all the way to High Bridge just to save some time and not do as much switching. Alright, next move for us here in Moscow is to go ahead and connect up to our 5 pickups on the next track, and then reconnect to our train, do a brake test, and then we'll be ready to head out. As I've said before, this is a short line here in Moscow, so I will be making a video in the future about the operations here, but I need to spend some time getting all that stuff assembled, getting it together, and getting this area populated. So it's going to be a little bit, but eventually I will feature this. This is going to definitely be a very popular part of this railroad. And just like that, our switching at Moscow is finished. Last thing to do here is our brake test, then we will be off. And just one thing to say, don't mind the pixelated looking European style houses there in the background. Those eventually will be replaced. If you go back and check some of my old videos around either Coxton or High Bridge, you'll kind of see some of the newer neighborhoods that I've made, and trust me, they are going to look a lot better. They will pull a bit more off of your GPU and make your computer stress out a bit, but it's going to be definitely worth it, trust me. Had to get a little extra notch on that one. There we go. Now we're moving. Alright, so looking at our tags here, we can see that next up for us is the Castlegate Co-op. There's going to be quite a bit of work here. We've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Man, 16 cars to go to the Castlegate Co-op. So that's going to be, it'll be fun to do. So we'll see. At the Castlegate Co-op, there are 4 tracks. Only 3 of them are serviceable for southbound trains. You have to get the 4th one with a northbound train, which if you do go back and watch the video on the northbound way freight, which was done a few months ago, you do get to see a section where we work the Castlegate Co-op, and you will see kind of the same deal. That train heading north can only work 3 spurs, and then there's 1 spur that is left exclusively for this train. And for anyone out there who may be wondering why we have a tank car connected to the locomotive, there is an FRA rule that hazardous loads cannot be connected to the locomotive. I do believe that that rule applies for trains over 3,000 tons, or maybe 3,000 feet. I can't remember. It's one of those two, I think. I will say, however, though, for this one, that tank car next to the locomotive is empty, so nothing to worry about. If you're the kind of modeler who likes to pay attention to those kind of details, you have at it. Sometimes I think about that kind of stuff, and sometimes I don't worry about it. It just depends on my mood and how much work I want to do. Here we'll go ahead and get a shot of our train crossing the Arkansas River. I definitely love to shoot this bridge a lot. I tend to submit a lot of screenshots to, you know, different friendly screenshot competitions here and there with this bridge, and I haven't won anything yet, and that's fine. Not offended by it, but I just think that this is a really nice scene with a lot of good vantage points. And here we are coming to the south side of the Castlegate Co-op, coming to a stop. Once we get stopped, we will go ahead and get the conductor out on the ground and do some assessment of our cars to see which ones are going where, and come up with a plan to get our switching done. Alright, that'll do. Gotta say, I do like these new camera angles. They are pretty awesome. So here we are in the walking camera, just walking along the side. Don't really do this very often, I'm going to be honest, when I'm just playing single player by myself. However, I definitely wanted to do this now to kind of take a look at things and get the feel for, you know, a very fast walk along the side of this train. Definitely am excited to get back to work on the route and put some more Turfex in to replace some of this grass and just make it look a lot more uniform. Also give it the ability to move in the wind, so that's going to be a very nice addition for those of you guys who like to have some boots on the ground and work your train this way. Alright, so while we're here at Castlegate, let's kind of talk about how the co-ops work. So Castlegate is probably the busiest of all the co-ops. Brockwell Co-op would definitely be second, but Castlegate is busy because it's actually worked by 3 trains and it is big. But we have a track for loading grains like wheats or barley or rye, those kinds of things. We have a track for delivering fertilizer, a track for delivering feed, and a track for picking up loaded stock cars. So now any stock car on the entire route that's loaded pretty much always heads south to Coxton because there is a meat packing plant there, and we butcher those livestock, make some meat, and then of course ship those out on reefers. But here, I know it's kind of all running fast. That's just to kind of keep things moving. You can easily spend an hour and a half here if you have to doing some switching. But last move is we're gonna, well, it's not last move yet, but I personally like to do all my pickups first. So it is the last move of the pickups. But once we get all the pickups out of the way, I like to go ahead and shove back and reconnect to the train and then get clear of the switch, and then I like to go ahead and do all my setouts. Now we don't really have to worry about putting things in front of anything else or behind anything else here, since most of these spurs kind of are bi-directional. The only one that's not bi-directional is the one for the stock cars. But pretty much for the most part, it doesn't really matter too much because anytime that the trains are switching, they have plenty of space and opportunity to run around cars if they need to. So the 3 trains that work this co-op are the northbound manifest, or way freight, sorry, the southbound manifest, which we are running today, and then there is a KCS grain train that serves only the grain silos in every co-op on the main line here. So I have not made a video for that yet, but I will someday just because I love the KCS so much. Rip KCS. But here, let's enjoy a couple of clips just kind of riding back with the stock cars as we go get ready to set those out there on their spur. Once we're done setting these out and get them in place, we'll go ahead and get back to the front of the train and get ready to head on to Castlegate. Alright, well, we are all set to depart the Castlegate Co-op. Went ahead and ran everything in high speed just so we could get through the switching a bit faster. But now that we are done working it, the next destination for us is Castlegate. When we get to Castlegate, we will see here in a little bit, there is a yard there in town. Castlegate has its own local switcher that works the industries and the yard there in town. And that's not because it gets a lot of trains necessarily that come through each day, but because it just gets a lot of rail cars each day. So instead of having a local or a way freight tie up the main line all day long, you know, 2 or 3 hours in modeling is the equivalent of, you know, 6 to 10 in the real world. Instead, what we do is we leave a little local switcher in there, and then we just have the through trains and the locals just drop off cars in the yard, and then of course the local switcher will do all the work. So when we get there, you'll see There's some cars for coal trains from the mines, and then there's 4 tracks for setting out and picking up cars for the 2 major industries. Until we get there, though, let's enjoy some nice rural scenes. So looks like the cabbage here is getting ready to go to market pretty soon. The only concern that I foresee when we get into Castlegate is the fact that we only have 5 setouts and they're really short cars. I am afraid that when we see all of our pickups, we may not be able to make all of those pickups. But until we get there, let's have some more rail fanning, and we'll see you over in Castlegate. Well, if you look in the distance, you can see we do have our approach medium. That is because we are going to take the diverge up here onto the siding at CP Castle. That is the control point here for Castlegate. And it makes sense that we would go to the siding because we have some work to do here in Castlegate. And you cannot access the siding unless you, or the yard, unless you take the siding. Obviously, as you can tell, there are still a lot of details to put in this area, but for the most part, the general idea is roughed out. So as I got here, I recognized the issue that I was facing, and that is we have some priority traffic in our yard here waiting to be picked up. So if you look at the back of those cut of cars on the left, we have some piggyback and one little set of an intermodal car with some 20-foot containers on there. So in Castlegate, this is the only place on the route where we can actually load piggyback cars. And it's not a big terminal. You can say, I guess, that the Cotton Belt is experimenting with intermodal and priority traffic in this branch. So as it stands, we're going to have to pick those up first. And since we are only giving up 5 short cars, we're only going to take those 3 priority cars. And that's mostly because we need to keep our train as close to 3,000 feet as possible. You can technically go over 3,000 feet as long as you don't interact with another train that's longer than 3,000 feet, because then you guys will get stuck. But here you're going to see, I'll speed it up, but here you're going to get to see kind of how we do operations in Castlegate. So I'll catch back up with you guys here in just a second. Alright, so first order of business is we detach, we clear the switch into the yard, and then we back in. So typically what we do is any cars that are being set out in Castlegate, we will drop those off first, and then we'll go do our pickups. Now, if we had enough space, we would just take that whole cut of pickups, and we would just reconnect our train and get rolling. But the issue today is we don't have enough space for all of our pickups. So we decided we would just grab the priority ones, and unfortunately they are at the back. So we're going to have to get all these other ones out of the way. Alright, and of course, you know, I'm not too picky about how I do movements. However, when I have time, I try to think about how I can do the movements with the least amount of coupling and uncoupling, because that's what takes so much time in the real world. So as we back these guys up, I decided to leave those 3 priority cars over on the track so that all I have to do is couple up to them once and then couple up to the train, and that eliminates one set of uncoupling and therefore eliminates a move of having to go back to them. So in my opinion, that was definitely a good move. Now, since we have some yard space, we can just leave those hoppers kind of out of the way. But that's pretty much it. We just set out and pick up and then reconnect, and then we get ready to head back out. If you like rail fanning, this station right here is a great place to rail fan. The main line here through Cascade has a pretty high speed limit. I think it's 50 or 55 on the main, and so you know you can get trains going through at a good clip. Obviously, you can see the siding has a limit of 35, but that makes sense because that's a siding. Here we are continuing south. So from Cascade to Brockwell, you have quite a bit of climbing you have to do. Nice thing about this part of the route, though, is even though you're climbing, the grades are not too crazy. You do get some ups and downs, but it's all pretty high speed, so you can get your train up to, you know, 40, 50 miles an hour. But this is actually where I'm going to cut this video today, just because it's already past the 20-minute mark. So we will catch the rest of this train on a part 2 video coming up soon. We still have 3 locations to work. We've got to go to Brockwell, we've got to go to the Fulton Co-op, and the Highbridge Co-op. So stay tuned for those. Thanks again for joining. Please make sure to like and leave a comment if you have a question or saw something you liked. I always enjoy responding to you guys' comments and keeping up some dialogue. So as always, take care of yourselves, enjoy yourselves, and thanks for watching, and we will see you guys next time.